Okay, so good evening, everybody. Thank you all for attending virtually today. Hopefully this session will be useful for you all. Before we start, I thought I'd kick off with a little introduction from myself and my two colleagues. They'll be helping to deliver this session today. So some of you will recognise me, hopefully most of you do. For those of you who don't, my name is Lily Sinclair and I'm the ASK Delivery Coordinator for Norfolk and Ipswich. So the ASK programme, if you don't know already, is funded by the National Apprenticeship Service, and we offer every educational establishment in England access to a free bespoke support package, and this is available for students, parents, teachers and careers advisors. So most of you are aware of the full offer already, and you'll know that we've had to kind of tailor it to fit in with the current pandemic. If there is anything after this session that you kind of re-jogged your memory and you think, oh, actually I want to book something in, just give me an email or a call and we can kind of get that started and we can arrange a planning meeting. Okay, so I am joined by Rebecca and Trisha, and I'll let them introduce themselves to you.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Trisha. Similarly to Lily, I am also an ASK program coordinator, and I specifically deliver in the Hertfordshire region and also a small part of Essex, so I deliver in Southend as well. So in this session, my role really is to cover the basic information and just give you an overview on apprenticeships and how they've updated. So I'm going to cover what exactly are apprenticeships, obviously a comparison between higher and degree level apprenticeships with going off to university as a full-time student. I'm then going to cover why apprenticeships are so important now. I'm going to do a bit about the range of apprenticeships that are available, the levels. Hopefully I'll try and explain the levels as well and how they compare to traditional qualifications. And then finally, I'm going to show you some of the local vacancies at the moment so you can get an idea of which companies are advertising at the moment.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Shackstead, and much like Trisha and Lily, I deliver the ASK programme, but I deliver it across Kent and Medway. Today, for my part, I'm going to be mainly wrapping up the session, so just putting some extra emphasis on things that we've said, and I'm also going to be introducing our lovely Jan. Now, before I pop into the chat, I can see that somebody's having bad sound. Can we just put a Y or an N in the chat box just to check that you can all hear us okay? And while you're doing that, I will just continue explaining what I'm going to do. Okay, I seem to be getting a lot of Y's here. So I'm really sorry, Emma. This may just be your computer. So not only am I introducing the lovely Jan and wrapping up the session, but we are going to be taking a couple of question breaks. So in between Trisha and Lily's sections, I will be listing all of the questions that are coming in via the chat box, so feel free to write your questions into the chat box and we will give those on dedicated times. And then between Lily and myself, we'll have another question break, and then right at the end we'll have another question break, and I will be managing those questions as we go. Just to reiterate, just to double check, if you do have your mics on, I am asking them to be off just so that we don't have too many distractions as we go on. Lily, back to you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Trisha. Okay, so we're going to start off with a bit about general apprenticeships and higher and degree from Trisha. So I'll hand over to you, Trish.
Thanks, Lily. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to start off with a bit of an overview on what exactly apprenticeships are. Hopefully you all have a kind of general awareness of this, but I'll go into a bit more detail. So who can actually do an apprenticeship? At what age can you do an apprenticeship? So anyone above the age of 16 can go on to do an apprenticeship, and this really does go up to any age. It's not just for school leavers, so it's not just for 16 or 18-year-olds. Anyone can find themselves doing an apprenticeship. Even if you're in a full-time job, you can still do an apprenticeship to progress on your skills and experience. So it's ongoing training, and that is how an apprenticeship should be seen. Now, I do a bit of a quiz with the students to find out how much they know about apprenticeships. And one of the key facts is that apprenticeships have been around since the late Middle Ages. So they've been around for a very, very, very long time, but they've changed and adapted over the years. But the concept has stayed the same. So essentially with an apprenticeship, it is a combination of earning and learning at the same time. So that is essentially what an apprenticeship is. The way that it is structured is that 20% of their time will be spent studying and 80% of their time will be spent working with the employer. So 20% of their time will be with the training provider, and the training provider is it's either the college, university, independent training provider that manages their study. So they make sure that they get that qualification at the end of that apprenticeship. So that's essentially how an apprenticeship is structured. It is a real job with real responsibilities. I think a lot of people assume that with an apprenticeship, it's going to be a bit like work experience, or it might be a bit like an internship, or they might be given, you know, the menial tasks to do, like make the tea or coffee. But that really isn't the case. They are given real responsibilities within that role, and they're treated just like any other employee. They are not treated like the apprentice. So that's one key thing about apprenticeships. The main difference with them being a regular employee and them being an apprentice is that they have that study element. So they will be working towards a job-related qualification. So it's a bit different to the traditional qualifications where it may be more subject-based. An apprenticeship is job-related. So for example, if they were doing a civil engineering apprenticeship, they will get a civil engineering qualification at the end of it. They are also getting that contract of employment. So that contract of employment is really important, tells them everything they need to know about that apprenticeship. So how many hours are they going to be working per week? What is their pay entitlement? How many holidays are they entitled to? It'll also give a bit more information about the apprenticeship itself. So how long is that apprenticeship going to be? And are they required to, for example, stay on with that employer after that apprenticeship is completed? So all of that key information is detailed in that contract of employment. So that's why we always encourage any young person or anyone who wants to do an apprenticeship to be very wary and read over that contract of employment. They will be working for at least 30 hours per week, but like I said, 20% of their time will be towards their study. So within that 30 hours, they will be given, legally, they have to be given that time off the job to work towards their qualification. And they are earning a wage. So not only are they getting paid to work for that company, but they're also getting paid to study, which is really, really important. So they're getting paid for both, which is fantastic. In terms of duration, so an apprenticeship can last anywhere between 1 year to 6 years, which is the maximum amount of time that they can spend doing an apprenticeship. But on average, it takes around 1 to 4 years for an apprentice to complete that apprenticeship. So that just gives you a bit of an overview on apprenticeships. And again, we will be sending over resources with all this information on there. And if you do have any questions on that, then please feel free to write that in the chat box throughout. Okay, I now wanted to move on to talk a bit more in detail about how degree apprenticeships compare to going off to university as a full-time student. So I'll give you a bit of background first. Degree apprenticeships haven't been around for that long. They were only introduced in 2015. So they're a fairly new concept. But since then, more than 100 universities offer degree apprenticeships, and this includes some Russell Group universities too. So if you wanted a full list of all of those universities and full list of the degrees that are offered through apprenticeships, then have a look at the Which Guide for higher and degree level apprenticeships, and that will give you lots of details about that. In terms of the key differences, so just like any other apprenticeship, with a degree apprenticeship, they are working full-time. So they're a full-time student, but they're studying part-time. So that means that they won't have as many modules per semester as a full-time university student. Because they're studying part-time, that means that it'll take them a little bit longer to get that degree. So it takes on average around 4 to 6 years for an apprentice to get that degree apprenticeship and to complete that degree apprenticeship. But at the end of that 4 to 6 years, they're going to have 4 to 6 years worth of industry experience. They're going to have been paid a salary by the company. They won't receive any student debt because all of that is paid for them by the company and also by the government. And also, more importantly, they will have achieved their degree at the end of that apprenticeship. So I feel like it is becoming a really popular option at the moment. I am going to show you some examples of degree apprenticeship vacancies a bit later on, but I think it's a no-brainer. If I were to do it all again, I definitely would have considered degree apprenticeship. But the most important message that I think students should be aware of is that they have the option and they have that choice, and they can apply for both. So they can apply via UCAS and have their UCAS choices to go off to university, but they can also apply for degree apprenticeships too. And then that way they have options, and they can even defer their uni place, continue to apply for degree apprenticeships, and they have that backup at the end of it. And there's also a useful link in the top corner by, it's an article by the Birmingham University. So we will be sending that link as well. And if you wanted any additional information on degree apprenticeships, then that is a really useful article to read. So I would definitely recommend having a look at that. Any questions, again, please feel free to type them in the chat box. So why are apprenticeships becoming so important now? So students are becoming increasingly interested in the apprenticeship route, and there's been numerous studies on that to kind of examine and look into what's the thought process and how things have changed. So there are a couple of surveys that we have and a couple of research articles that is really useful to have a look at. So the first is from the Sutton Trust. So what they found is during their annual survey that they conducted, it's called Aspirations of University, the proportion of students that felt that going to university wasn't as important had risen significantly from 2013 to 2019, so quite recently. So that figure had risen from 11% to 20%. So it's interesting to see that there is actually a rise in that view that more students are feeling, okay, maybe university isn't the best option for me. In that same survey, they also found that 2/3 of young people said that they were interested in doing an apprenticeship rather than going to university. So again, quite a large chunk of those students felt that, yes, they would like to undertake that degree apprenticeship. There is a second survey there. This is by the Chartered Management Institution. So this was conducted with parents, and what they found overall is that parents favour degree apprenticeships over university. So in a 2019 survey, they actually found that 71% of parents actually believed that a person who went and did a degree apprenticeship were more than likely to get that full-time job at the end of it rather than going off to university. So it's clear that there's been a massive strides that have been made with degree apprenticeships, which is fantastic to see. However, there's still a lot more work to do with degree apprenticeships, because this is kind of like the unknown option, the unknown route. And with general feedback from parents, teachers and students, they have said that they would like additional support on apprenticeships to find out, how to go about applying, and just general myth busting as well. So I think that's really important, and obviously that's why the Ask program is here, to offer that support to students, parents and teachers, so that they're more ready and prepared to go undertake the apprenticeship route. Okay, I now wanted to move on to talk about the range of apprenticeship opportunities that are available, and there are loads. So this is just a handful of what is actually available at the moment. If you wanted a full list of all of the apprenticeship standards, then I definitely recommend having a look at the Institute for Apprenticeships website. There will be a link in the resource pack that we will send out to you afterwards. But that will show you all of the standards that are currently available, but also the ones that are in development too, so not quite ready yet. So definitely have a look at that. There is an A to Z of apprenticeships that can be given to students as well, which basically is around about 3 or 4 pages that has a full list of all the apprenticeships. So some of them include nursing, you can go into accountancy, surveying, architecture, hairdressing. There's now first off is a pilot apprenticeship, which wasn't available before and is now available. So that one is really, exciting. So there's loads more that are going to be introduced each year. So I definitely recommend having a look at that list if you wanted a full list of all of the vacancies and apprenticeship roles. Okay, so now I wanted to move on to talk about the different levels of apprenticeship. So hopefully I can break down each category and explain what each level is equivalent to in terms of traditional qualifications. And then again, if you have any questions at all, then please feel free to ask in the chat box or once we take a pause after this section. So your level 2 intermediate apprenticeship is the lowest level that an individual can go into, and that is equivalent to 5 GCSEs graded 5 to 9. So that's the current grades. The old grades were equivalent to A star to C. So that's the qualification that they'll get at the end of that level 2. For a level 3, that apprentice will get a qualification that's equivalent to 2 A levels or equivalent. So that's what they will get at the end of that level 3 apprenticeship. Generally, if they wanted to do an apprenticeship, if a student wanted to do an apprenticeship after year 11, then they can definitely have a look at the level 2 or level 3 apprenticeships. More than likely, employers will just be looking for GCSE qualifications to take them onto those levels, or they might just want to look at the functional skills. So that's the reason why the majority of year 11s would be able to apply for a level 2 or level 3 apprenticeship. And we then have the higher and degree level apprenticeship. So the higher category covers everything from level 4 to 7. So that includes foundation degrees, higher national diplomas, higher national certificates. You also have your MVQ. So that is the higher category. You can also get higher apprenticeships in level 6 and 7, but what that means is that it does not include a degree, but all includes an endpoint assessment as standard. You then have the final category, which are your degree level apprenticeships, and that is your level 6 and 7 degree apprenticeships. So your level 6 is your bachelor's degree, your level 7 is your master's degree. So a lot of students get confused with the degree apprenticeships and they might think, okay, am I going to get a specialized bachelor's degree? Am I going to get a different certificate that says it's an apprenticeship degree? That's not the case. They're going to get exactly the same qualification as a full-time university student. It's just the way that they get that degree is slightly different, which I explained earlier on. You also have integrated and non-integrated degrees. So the main difference between the two is whether they have a separate EPA or not, so a separate endpoint assessment. So with an integrated degree, that means that it is done entirely through the university and it does not have a separate endpoint assessment with an independent endpoint assessment organization. So it's just whatever is built into the existing degree, such as maybe a viva or a dissertation, or it could be a research project or examination. Whereas the non-integrated degree, that means that they will have a separate EPA with an independent EPA organization. And this is done following the completion of their degree. So that's the main difference. If you did want to find a bit more information about the integrated and non-integrated degree, then I do recommend having a look at that link, which again, we will send you via the chat box as well and in an email afterwards. So another thing to remember with these levels is not to be held back by looking for one particular level. So for example, if a student is in year 13 and they'll probably be looking for a degree apprenticeship, sometimes they might have to look at maybe one of the lower levels first and then work their way up. The main reason for that is with an apprenticeship, it's not just about the qualifications that they have. They also need to show that they have the skills, knowledge, and behaviors to take them into that apprenticeship. And if they don't necessarily have that, they don't have the experience and knowledge to take them into that level 6, they might have to start at maybe like a level 3 or level 4 first, and then work their way up to getting that degree. I'll give you a quick example. So I did know one apprentice who started her apprenticeship with KPMG. She started on a level 3 apprenticeship straight after year 13. But the great thing is that she got her foot in the door, and then the company then paid for her to do her degree apprenticeship. So she's now currently undergoing her degree apprenticeship, which is great. Other things that I wanted to go through is the jobs in the local area. So I've taken all of this information from the Find an Apprenticeship website. So you've got a range of different vacancies. They range from level 3 all the way up to level 7. So that first one is with AstraZeneca, and that's a finance apprenticeship, and they're offering an annual salary of around 15k. You then got a data analyst that's offering around 22 to 28k, and that's a level 4 based in Norwich. Then you've got a learning and skills teacher apprenticeship, that's a level 5, and it's offering around 20k starting salary. And then the final 3 are your degree apprenticeships. So you've got a planning and compliance officer and a software engineer. They're both done through the Angular Ruskin University, and they're offering around 22k, and that software engineer is competitive. And then you've got a level 6 in the middle there, that's civil engineering, and that's the bachelor's degree. They're offering around 18.5, and that is with UEA. So as you can see, it gives you an idea of what kind of salary that apprentice can get if they're going into a higher or degree level apprenticeship. It also gives you an idea of the closing date and start date. So that is important. They need to know when these companies are closing their applications and when is the potential start date. As you can see, most of them kind of close in the spring term. You might get some that are closing in January, February, and then you won't get a start date until September, October time if it is a higher or degree level apprenticeship, although you do have some anomalies here which will get you started a bit earlier. So those are 2 key things that they need to be wary of and they need to factor in. Another thing that I did want to mention is the number of higher apprenticeships. So the number has decreased because of COVID, but the good news is that there has been additional funding into apprenticeships that the government has given, and we are slowly seeing an increase in the number of vacancies across the country that are available. So in terms of the higher apprenticeships, there's around 207 available now, and the degree apprenticeships, there's around 233 vacancies nationwide on the binding apprenticeship. So it is slowly increasing, but it is good to kind of keep a check of that. And there is a vacancy listing. We have it all on an Excel sheet. Those are the higher and degree apprenticeships, and they are mostly closing end of Jan. So we will send that over to you as well, so you can kind of get a look at that as well and see the current vacancies. Okay, we'll move on to Lily now, who's going to go through the resources.
Perfect. Rebecca, I don't know if you've got any questions before we...
Yeah, no, so quick question break. We haven't received any yet, but we have had a comment from Melvin, who has popped in a link to Aviva advertising some higher and degree opportunities. Please do not forget, if you do have questions, pop them in the chat box. I am trying to moderate them, and I will have them in the next question break. Thanks, Lily.
Perfect, thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so we'll move on as you haven't got any questions. So I'm going to go through the sixth form guide, which is essentially why we're all here today. So just a quick overview of the resources. So the sixth form guide has been developed after teachers had told us they weren't always confident in how to help guide their students interested in apprenticeships. So the aim is to kind of place apprenticeships alongside UCAS with similar preparations and timeframes mirrored in both processes. So we've created 2 different resources for this. We've got an interactive guide for students, which is the top one you can see, and then, oh, sorry, the bottom one. And then we've got the teacher's how-to guide. And this is kind of for the form tutors or anyone who's supporting sixth form students. Both are available completely free of charge on the Amazing Apprenticeships website, basically the same as any of our other resources. And the links are shown on screen, but again, they're in the chat box, and we'll also send them out to you via email afterwards as well. So we're going to bombard you with loads of resources. I'm sorry, but you're going to have so much you won't know what to do with them all. Perfect. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So the teacher's guide kind of outlines the various ways in which you can support your students in applying for apprenticeships and how to support them through the recruitment process from initial research through to interview stage and beyond. And each section is broken down here, and you're given a kind of a tick box for each section. So it's kind of in an easy to format, and the student, sorry, I can't even speak today, it's been a long day, and it supports student tracking. There's bite-sized information about understanding apprenticeships, tailoring apprenticeship search to their interests, finding apprenticeship vacancies, writing a winning apprenticeship application, preparing for the apprenticeship recruitment process, staying motivated and getting ready for work, 10 ways to embed the apprenticeship, a CV checklist for teachers, which is really great. It's kind of towards the bottom of the guide, an application and covering checklist as well for teachers, which again is near the bottom. And there's lots of fun ideas for encouraging students to share experiences. So that's kind of the teacher guide briefly, but you know, it's really full packed with loads of different things in there as well. So definitely would have a look at that. Perfect, thank you, Trisha. The student guide as well. So the student guide is an interactive PDF. The students can work through this in dedicated sessions or timeframes which are suitable to the teachers. Although this is also self-directed document, so this can be completed at home remotely, which can work quite well at the moment, obviously, as we're not in schools. So this is quite nice for kind of students to do it in their own time if they have got any, and then obviously contact the teachers if there's anything else they need support with. As it's interactive, the students can work through, enter answers, tick off what they've done and save it as a file. So the teachers or whoever is supporting them can track and sort of get their understanding and progress. And if they need any further support, then you can offer that as well. You know, if there's anything they want to discuss with you, you can kind of support them with that. The guide as well will take students through the process of understanding an apprenticeship, kind of from what they're from learning what they are to applying and hopefully securing an apprenticeship. This was actually written before the current pandemic, so it's worth noting that some of the information may apply to pre-COVID. So, for example, preparing for interviews, going to events to find out more. But it's still, the information given is still useful in order for students to find out and understand the process of what an apprenticeship is, what employers are looking for, that kind of thing. And these can be used alongside the recent resources and information around online recruitment as well. So I think this guide's quite, great, to be honest. It balances between supported learning and independent learning, as it would for UCAS, and it can be used equally for all. So you don't need to separate students, to use it if they're not really interested in it. It kind of gives all the students an opportunity to explore apprenticeships, even if they're thinking of university straight away. It kind of gives them, plants this little seed in their head, so they've kind of got that as a backup option, which is quite a nice thing to do as well. It also avoids students or staff ruling out apprenticeships because of misconceptions or misunderstandings that they may have as well. So it's quite a good little guide as well. So with all this in mind, we therefore talk about this offer being a sixth form programme rather than just sixth form resources, as it's important that using this resource sits within a bigger careers or apprenticeship programme. So kind of to give you a quick overview of how this guide works, so it's full of loads of different tasks and activities. It explains how the guide is used more effectively, so students are prompted and reminded to save their work. It contains contents of the chapters covered, which the students can tick off to indicate they've completed it and understood that section. It also goes through what an apprenticeship is with different case study videos that they can obviously go through virtually, activities, quizzes, that kind of thing, inspirational stories, and a range of tasks as well to improve their understanding, and also an area to log any thoughts or questions they might have around that chapter. And this kind of continues throughout the following chapters. So we've got hiring degree apprenticeships, what are the benefits of an apprenticeship, which apprenticeship is available, which apprenticeships are available, is an apprenticeship right for me, choosing an apprenticeship, finding an apprenticeship, applying for an apprenticeship, what happens if it doesn't work out. So this is kind of a question I know I get asked a lot. I don't know if Trisha and Rebecca are the same, but it kind of brings in some ideas around resilience and to keep trying. And it can be real knocking confidence for young people to not get the first apprenticeship they go for. And unfortunately, apprenticeships, as we all know, are quite competitive, particularly in the current climate, and as applications are for any job essentially. So often students will find it hard to not be too hard on themselves or feel like they've failed, when really it can happen to anyone. And as I said, particularly at this moment. And it's also a good way for them to build themselves up, learn how to receive feedback from these companies and kind of build themselves back up again and go again. So that's quite a nice section. We've also got money, finance and funding. So this is another section we get asked a lot about, mainly from parents. So this covers some key questions around costs, salaries and support available for those who might need additional support. Preparing for your first day of apprenticeship. So how should your students secure that apprenticeship, how to prepare for the world of work and making it a good first impression. Tracking applications. So this session really is a benefit to student and teacher. So the teacher can see what the students are going for and what stages they're at. With UCAS, there's one central system to see which top 5 universities students have picked. With apprenticeships, they could be having an interview with one employer, an assessment with another, and not have heard back from another as well. So it's really kind of varied with the university and apprenticeship route. And this is a place for students to log that and for the teachers to kind of have a better picture of what they're doing and kind of track how they're getting on and what they've applied for, if they're interviewing for any different roles. So that's quite a good little section as well. Next slide, please, Trisha. And the purpose for this guide, obviously, is to support the students with apprenticeship information and application support. We want to give teachers a basic understanding of apprenticeships. It's built for Key Stage 5 support. So we kind of really want to target the Key Stage 5 groups. Guides from initial research to application and interview stages and beyond. Next slide, please. Perfect. Okay, and we've also got here the 2-year cycle. So we've worked with sixth form teachers and leaders to kind of gain an understanding of how the full-time application cycle works, throughout the different sixth form term times. And we've worked together to create a similar programme for apprenticeships that can mirror it. So as you can see here in the table, how the learning can be broken down into the 2 different years. So in year 12, much of the focus is around awareness and research, learning more about apprenticeships and what options are available to the student. And in year 13, this kind of shifts to preparation for applying and the application process, as well as making those applications. And this starts from the offset in term 1, just as university applications do. We're not yet sure on the impact of COVID. We would usually have seen a good number of higher and degree level vacancies advertised in the autumn term, which obviously, as Tricia said, has slightly decreased upon last year, but many employers are still advertising, and we do hope that details of those vacancies will be available again in a central document later in the autumn term. We have just got our new higher and degree vacancy listing out as well, so we'll send that out to you as well, like we mentioned. Vacancies are always available as well throughout the year, so much like the slide that Tricia showed with the local vacancies, you can see the kind of closing dates and the start dates for those, which is quite nice, which is why it's also really important that research and preparation is so key in that kind of year 12, so that they're ready to apply from the beginning of year 13 and not missing out on any opportunities, because I think a lot of students think, oh, I'll just apply when everyone else is applying for university or kind of towards the end of the year. But if they start at the beginning of the year, they've then got that opportunity to see everything that then comes through. And your school may offer a lot of this support already. So many schools are doing brilliant work around all of this. So some of you guys are already doing amazing stuff. And this is just to say that this resource should be fed into and support this existing activity rather than replacing it. So equally, many schools are quite new to apprenticeships and they might not have this type of support programme in place. So understand this does take time. They're not going to be developed overnight. So the ASK programme can support with all of the activity. We can do face-to-face. Obviously, at the moment, we can't do that. But we've got a lot of virtual activities we can offer as well. So we can kind of do mock assessment workshops with students and things like that. So that's quite handy. So we can kind of come into schools, like I said, and do application workshops, assemblies. We can do stuff with the parents as well, because I think they're quite hard to tackle sometimes. So the parents' evenings also work out really well. I've had quite a few virtual parents' evenings recently, which have turned out really well. I think a lot of parents find it a lot easier to do it virtually rather than face-to-face. But ultimately, this all makes the programme more sustainable and effective in the long run. Next slide, please, Tricia. Perfect. And that's that from me. So I'll hand over to Rebecca.
Okay, so we've had one question and it's from the Fred Nicholson School. So they are specifically supporting young people with special educational needs, and they're looking really at level 2 onwards. But then how does that go from higher degree? Is there extra support out there for SEN across a variety of needs? Have you got any signposting suggestions that they can have a look into? Or is it best, Lily, that maybe you have a conversation with Fred Nicholson School separately?
Yeah, I would say perhaps if you wanted to contact me directly, we can have a discussion about what kind of support you are after and how we can kind of tailor it to the students. I think that would probably be best if that's okay with you. So just drop me an email, either today or tomorrow, and we can sort that out. I don't know if you girls have got anything to kind of add.
I mean, I think it links into kind of the final thoughts and the fact that, Lily, you have just explained it so well, and it's this big guide that we've got created really does not only support the teachers, but it is supporting those students, and it's giving you that longevity, and it's building an equal platform between UCAS and apprenticeships and other opportunities. And I think when we come in with the special educational needs, yes, the guides can definitely be used, but we do understand that there are some other challenges. And what's perfect about the guide is that it does link in with the ASK programme specifically. So what you will see is a parallel between the brochure that I sent right at the start of this session, and obviously, as you've heard quite a few times now, we will be sending out in an email afterwards. It is parallel with the guide, so we can actually build those sessions to fit in with the guide that we are explaining to you today. So another couple of final thoughts from me is that apprenticeships are ever evolving. Believe me, we do completely understand that sometimes you do have some pushback. It's not just the parents. No, we understand that sometimes there are some teachers that do have barriers around apprenticeships. Maybe their understanding isn't that great, which is why this could be a really good opportunity for you to use the guide maybe in form times, just to break down those barriers with teachers, with parents as well. Those students will be going home and saying, well, I've got this new workbook for apprenticeships. And I will personally, I think I can say this, we'll normally find the parents who do maybe have their backup around apprenticeships, when they see these guides and they see what opportunities are out there, it really does support the whole agenda of, allowing those students to see the wider opportunities. We are seeing a rise in students looking for apprenticeships, so it's really about getting this guide into your curriculum as early as possible, just to ensure that no one's kind of falling through the net. It can tackle those at risk of NEET as well. If you start with those in year 12, you never know, they might just find that actually they can continue throughout and they can move on from year 13 into those apprenticeships. And it stops the misconceptions. So for myself, delivering across Kent and Medway, I can go into year 13 sometimes and they've got the misconceptions the same as those year 10s, and it just allows for those barriers once again to be broken down earlier. Now, what I'm going to do is introduce the lovely Kay, who is going to be delivering a few minutes about her apprenticeship.
Thank you, Rebecca. So as Rebecca said, my name is Kay, and I'm a current apprentice myself. I currently work for an organisation called Suffolk Growth, which means I work across 6 different local authorities, and I deliver projects that deliver housing, infrastructure and economic development. But I actually first started as an apprentice for East Suffolk Council 3 years ago, and I completed my level 3 business and administration apprenticeship, and that was after doing the full 2 years of my A-levels at lowest or sixth form. I was lucky enough that I got to complete my first apprenticeship early, and I applied for a full-time position with Suffolk Growth, and I literally tripled my salary overnight, which was fantastic. And I've chosen to do my level 4, and I'm about to finish that, and I will hopefully be doing my level 5 once I've completed. So it's been absolutely fantastic for me. And when I was at sixth form myself, I didn't get as much support as I would have liked with applying for apprenticeships. So if you take one thing away from today, it would be that to offer as much support as you do for those applying for university as well. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what I do in my day-to-day role, my roles and responsibilities. So I work in a very small team, but I get to work across lots of different offices and also work from home. As I said, my main part of my job is managing projects, so I have to keep them on track and manage budgets of like millions of pounds. I have to make sure I run events with external and internal team members, and just I also have a secretariat role within my job, so I'm also partly a PA to a head of service member in my team as well. And I also do data analysis and schedule lots of meetings, etc. But the main point of that slide is to say, as an apprentice, I think employers, if they are actively looking to employ apprentices, they are doing it because they do want them to be fully part of their organisation and have a full and varied role as well. So it's not just they're going to be doing one thing. I think most roles. Next slide, please. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a bit about my recruitment process when I first applied for an apprenticeship. So I was obviously still at sixth form college, and there wasn't that much information given to me about applying apprenticeships, but I actually applied for mine via Suffolk Jobs Direct, which is a great place for public sector apprenticeships, and also you have Norfolk Jobs Direct. But again, obviously findapprenticeship.gov.uk is the main place to find apprenticeships across all sectors as well. So when I applied, obviously had to do an application process, which included personal statement and obviously tell all your students to never be afraid to big yourselves up. Just because they might not have much employment experience, include their hobbies, their passion, why they'd like to work for that organisation, what do they really enjoy doing, etc. I did a formal interview, which had a panel of 3 interviewers, and a lot of the questions were scenario based because obviously employers are aware that they don't necessarily have all the employment experience, so a lot of them was how would you go about doing this, for example. And I will just say at this point as well, it was about a month's gap between applying and actually being offered an interview, because I do think most apprenticeship vacancies are normally open longer than a normal job vacancy. So if you get students asking why haven't I heard back, that I do find that is normally quite normal. And also I actually applied for several myself, just to make sure I had backup plans. And again, that's a really important thing to take back to students about keeping their options open, but obviously making sure that all of those backup options are something they're interested in. And I also had to do a general kind of maths and English assessment just to check those basic skills, but it was nothing to be afraid of at all. One thing I will always say is always research your organisation, make sure they understand their values, use social media to keep up with their current activity, and you can show that you're interested in them as well. And as it's been said before, the popularity of apprenticeships has really increased in the last few years, and they are incredibly competitive. So, and I've found it myself that it is really important to be prepared and just make sure they're as ready for an interview as they would be for university or any other job. Next slide, please. So yeah, why do I think that apprenticeships are great? So obviously the first reason is that you get to learn more as you learn. As I said, I tripled my salary in less than a year. So just because you start on a lower salary doesn't mean that it's going to increase over time. And that's really important to know, because I think some people can be put off by the lower salary. It's an amazing opportunity to build your confidence. Mine has grown immensely, and I would never have offered to speak on a presentation or to members of the public when I was at college or school, and I've won some staff awards. And I think employers in general are really if they're actively looking for an apprentice, then they will be willing to put the time and the effort to really help them build their knowledge, skills and confidence as well. You can get apprenticeships in nearly any sector, as been said. They're not just hands-on apprenticeships anymore, they're incredibly academic, and it's always worth a look, even just a second option. Obviously, employers nowadays are always looking for the on-the-job experience, that hands-on experience, and can often be looked at, you know, that skills and the abilities and professionalism is quite often looked at a lot more than just your academic ability as well, I find nowadays. So it's incredibly helpful for that. And again, you can apply for internal opportunities, and in this competitive market where finding a job can be quite difficult, it's really helpful to have that kind of internal insight as well. And never forget that young people bring that new, fresh ideas to the workplace, and employers are always happy to hear those ideas, and they should feel that by becoming an apprentice, they can really be part of an organisation. Next slide, please. So my advice to others, if you've got any students who are considering apprenticeships or just looking into them, whatever they do what's right for them. Make sure it's a subject they're interested in, something they have a passion for. Make sure they've done their research and they're not just following their friends, and because, as we all know, they won't be there in 10 years' time to pay their mortgage. Before applying, never be afraid to ask questions. So ring them up, email, phone the employer. I've been lucky enough to interview about 15 apprentices myself, and it's always the ones that contact you before that you remember. And things I normally look for, like when I'm interviewing an apprentice myself, is that even if they don't exactly know what they want to do, as long as they've got that drive, that ambition, you know, they've really shown enthusiasm, that's the thing that really matters. And again, just being professional, showing like good communication skills, even if they are quite nervous. And also again, making sure they've researched your organisational values and can kind of reflect it in themselves. God, I can't talk today. And again, never put themselves down, always big themselves up, and just show passion and enthusiasm in their personal statements or in their interview. I think that's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kay. Now, I think from all of us, we want to say well done, because it's really, really nice to hear such a success story. So thank you for that. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is I am sure you are all very overwhelmed by the amount of resources that are already coming your way. But there are more. There are many, many more. So I'm going to send few links for the last time now. As I said earlier, we will send them out, but the most beautiful thing about working with the Ask programme is we really do draw your eye to the Amazing Apprenticeships website. That website is purely for you to find out more information around apprenticeships, T-levels, traineeships, and really get to grips of what's going on. Realistically, we wanted to draw your attention to a couple of items. So, for example, they've got an amazing subject bundle, which is a bunch of posters which lead into apprenticeships from the specific subject areas that are most commonly found in schools. As you can see on the top screen, they've also got quizzes, they've got logo games, colouring in, just different ways for you to engage students around the idea of apprenticeships. There's lots of big assemblies, there's lots of Learn Live broadcasts from employers, providers, apprentices themselves, and you really can get to grips with all things apprenticeships via that website. So before we move on to any questions, I just want to give you a couple of minutes just to think of any questions if you've got any. Lily and Trisha, have we got anything else that we want to just let the people know before we close down?
I haven't got anything to add, but I just want to thank you all for listening to us ramble on today and giving you loads of information. So I'm sorry if it seems like a lot, but just going to try and help you as much as we can and make sure that you're all prepared for supporting your students. Like we've all said, we've got so many different resources we're sending out to you today. We'll send out a couple of follow-up emails as well. I've recorded the session as well, so if you have got anyone who has missed it and want to watch it again, let me know and I can send that on to you. But yeah, I just want to say thank you all for coming, and thank you, Kay, so much. You're really good, thank you. I don't know if Trisha's got anything to say.
No, if you have any questions, that the session's closed down by now, please do feel free to email Lily. She will be able to support you, and don't forget that the Ask programme is always at the end of that email. Trisha?
There may be some questions coming in through the chat box, so we'll wait a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
So yeah, any questions about anything that we covered today, please pop it in the chat box, or yeah, you can always email them afterwards. Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
we do have a couple of other sessions coming up. So we've got a Key Stage 3 specific session and a Key Stage 4 specific session. If you haven't been notified of that yet, which I'm sure Lily has done, Lily will send out some emails to you, just so that you can sign up for those as well.
Okay,
I think what we're getting in is thank you. Yeah. So thank you for the thank yous. Yeah. And hopefully we'll see you in another one of our sessions.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, it always makes me feel good when we get lots of thank yous.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Stop sharing.
I'll stop recording.
And I guess that's the end of the